Whilst strolling around the internet, like you do, we discovered a very interesting automotive project that used a Subaru automobile as an Xbox controller for racing sims. Right away, we knew we wanted to meet this crazy genius, but then we found a funny surprise. We saw your use a car as an Xbox controller project and thought it was great. And then we get halfway down the page and we find out that it's based on our product. we're like, this is great. So we knew we had to know more about Nishanth and how he came to such a novel project as turning a stationary car into a game controller.
I think what drew me to what you guys are doing is the fact that the product is so open. So before I started using Makina, I was using Comma AI's Panda, but their documentation isn't exactly the greatest. That was a very knowing look you had on your face.
No, I deny that. That was not knowing. That was just a smile. This is how my face looks. But well, let's jump into something about you then. What did you take in school?
That changed about 3 times. I basically, at the end of it, I was just like, I want to get out of here and really try something in the real world. But I started off doing aerospace engineering, did a year of that, realized I didn't like math, switched to computer engineering for some reason, realized that there was more math, and I actually got a computer science and entrepreneurship degree by the time I left school. And then I was just ready to get out there. But I mean, the entire time I was in school, I worked with our school's design school as well. So for me, I got a lot of experience mixing computer science and engineering with design and user strategy, and then also with business. So I try to get experience in all 3 of those areas, and that's kind of how I went out into the world. Oh yeah, I mean, I ended up graduating from the school, but I just was trying to get out of there as quick as possible.
So what did you ultimately end up graduating in?
Computer science as a major, and then a minor of entrepreneurship.
What would you say your background is that kind of led you to where you are?
So I guess when I first got out of school, I was working at Ear Maps. If you're not familiar with them, they used to be called Navtech back in the day. So yeah, if you use Maps in your car or by MapQuest or Amazon or Facebook.
I'm an old man. Yeah.
I mean, hey, I used to print out maps when I was little, so I'm in the same boat. But they got bought by Nokia at the time, and then Nokia sold them to a conglomerate of German auto manufacturers. So what we were doing throughout that entire time was basically taking GPS data and trying to use that to understand if we had maps that were out of date or if there were attributes to the map that didn't exist in the real world. So that kind of got me my first real experience with working with large amounts of data, and then 2, figuring out how to do stuff like machine learning and building huge cloud infrastructures to process those kind of things. And that experience really helped me kind of going forward. So I ended up working at a small startup after that called AirMap. So they do drone airspace management and safety awareness. So we built up that stuff from scratch, and now I think it's used by companies like DJI and some of the bigger drone manufacturers in the world. And that was fun for me, but I think there was still something missing at that time. So I was doing all this fun software engineering, but I knew it deep down that I wanted to do something a little bit more entrepreneurial than just writing code. So I tried my hand at a couple of other companies. So I ended up doing a little bit more architecture for code. I was doing product management. And even after all of those experiences, I even ended up working with self-driving cars, which was really fun. But in the end, I was like, you know what, I just need to set out by myself and try my hand at running my own company. So fast forward now 5 years, and I just started my own company about a year ago, and learning the ins and outs of doing a little bit of everything as I kind of build a team up eventually. I started my own company about a year ago, so pretty much all my time has kind of been devoted to that. So I quit my full-time job. I kind of decided to go my own route, and still trying to muddle through the waters of figuring out how to do that.
Wow, that's great. So what did you start your company based around? What do you do?
Basically, I'm trying to help bicyclists and scooter riders and skateboarders stay safe on city roads. So it's smart lights that react to the way that you move around cities. And then there's like a data modeling part so that Now, if you know people's intent saying, so say both of us like riding bicycles through a busy intersection, we want to turn left. You might turn left by like maybe going on the crosswalk. I might try following traffic unwisely. And it's hard for cities to model that type of thing. But now if people are both saying, hey, I'm turning left here, but we go on 2 different paths, it's now, you now have a data source to then model the way people do this around cities. And hopefully in the future when we have self-driving cars or whatever, we have ways of predicting the way people are going to behave in those type of dangerous situations.
So, do you have a product that is up and running right now, or?
Almost. I'm almost there. So, I've actually got one of the prototypes right here. So, it's a little bit of hardware. So, this guy, you can mount it onto your bicycle, onto your skateboard, onto your longboard, and then connect it to like interior lighting strips, and it'll give you basically brake lights, turn lights, and you can activate them either using your motion or you can use gesture. So if you have a smartwatch in your hand, you can put your hand out and you can gesture saying turn left, turn right, braking, simple stuff like that. So the hope is in the background, we're collecting information from people using these devices, and we can make roads safer for people once self-driving cars do come on in the future. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Neat. Very neat.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting prediction, particularly how it applies to self-driving cars. I saw a thing the other day about accidents in self-driving cars. Every time they have an accident, it propagates to every other car. So in theory, it won't have exactly the same accident ever again. They were talking about how everything in their vehicles is just another data point that they can continue to build on. So while accidents aren't an ideal thing, it's actually kind of nice. All of these beginning accidents are making the car that much harder to get into trouble in the future. I can see how that would tie in with the idea of you tracking bicycling data. If the cars could understand what the bicyclists are going to do, that would be great.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. It's been a dream since I was a child to take drivers out of the equation. They're not good at managing the vehicle. Then obviously you're coming to do the Xbox controller hack is just out of pure hobbyist love. This isn't a research project. This isn't a vocation per se.
No.
So how does one come to that? I mean, I read your blog post and you said you made it sound like it was the most natural thing that a person could do. It's like, well, my car died, so obviously I needed to do something. And most people would probably just let it sit there while they were waiting for their parts to arrive. So how did you come to that? Was it that something had been simmering in your mind for a long time and this presented an opportunity, or was it the other way around? The opportunity went, you went, hey, you know what? I could do a thing.
Yeah. That's a good question. So what I didn't tell you was that all the while that I've been doing these different jobs on the side, I've been doing, as a hobby, I've been doing racing. So I do time attack and drifting, just grassroots level motorsports. And there's a couple of fun events that you can go to around. And it's one of those hobbies that once you get into it, you really get sucked into it. And you're like, I need my fix, I need my fix, I need my fix. And when my car finally popped, I was like, well, I still want to practice driving on a racetrack, but I can't do it with a car that doesn't work. And hey, I know how to mess with CAN signals from cars because I used to work at a self-driving car company, and even before I'd been playing around with that stuff. So I was like, wait, what if you could just use the CAN signals from your car and use that to pretend it's a joystick for a racing sim? So that's kind of how the idea came about. And when I started the project, I didn't really have like a gaming computer or anything like that. So I took the next step further. I was like, so I have this Xbox here. How do I get the data from my car into my Xbox? Mm-hmm. So that was kind of how the project came about.
How long overall did the project take from the point where you said, hey, till the point where you were actually sitting there going, I'll be damned, this works?
That's a good question too. I want to say it was 2 weeks. And the biggest challenge with that 2 weeks, when I say 2 weeks, that was 2 weeks for the first iteration, which was wires going every which way in my car.
Sure.
I remember taking my car to a DIY garage that my friends run up in Chicago, and we were going to try running it on one of their lifts. And I remember I had forgotten like half the cables that I needed for this thing to work, and I was like, I drove 3 hours up here, and none of this works because I have this huge spaghetti mess of hardware to get it to run. So from there, it took maybe another, 2 to 3 weeks for me to make my own PCB, get the components, and just get them all soldered up so that you could just basically plop a little device on top of the M2, and then you could have analog controls that go to the next box as well.
I would have thought that one of the hardest parts of this project would have actually been running down the specific CAN bus messages involved in everything. How did you go about doing that?
So that part I kind of cheated in that I had some prior background trying to reverse engineer the signals for my car. So for a while now, I've always been trying to mess with CAN bus stuff, and a crazy harebrained idea I wanted to do after an 8-hour drive down to Atlanta was I wish I could make my own version of Tesla's autopilot for my manual Subaru BRZ.
Yes.
So I wanted to really know the different signals that were available in the car, and that process is there's a lot of open source tools out there. So if you plug in any CAN bus reader into your car, there's ways to filter out signals. I'm trying to think of the one, like for example, SavvyCAN's pretty popular open source tool.
Yeah.
At the time, before I had the Machina, I had the Calm AI Panda, and I used the Kibana web UI tool, and that was really easy to figure out which signals were steering, brakes, accelerator. You can have like clutch input and e-brake input, so you can basically read all the signals, and luckily Subaru was kind enough not to be like certain other auto manufacturers and filter out the data at the OBD2 port, which they do for either security purposes or just because they don't want you to really be fiddling around with that data.
Right.
So I guess I got lucky with my car and the fact that it was relatively easy to find those signals from just maybe, I don't know, spending an hour or two in the car and just looking to make sure that what I was doing in real life on the car, like turning the steering wheel, corresponded to seeing little bits go up and down on the canvas.
So that's how you isolated it. You just kept turning the wheel until you found the appropriate packets?
Yeah, one of the nice things about the Kibana tool that Calm AI put out is that it'll color bits that have changed according to how recently they changed.
Sure.
So then you're like, oh, that byte over there just changed as I did that, so maybe that's something I can look at. So that's how I came up with that info. But then loading it onto the Machina, I was like, oh, look, this works pretty easily. And I just did like a quick debug statement saying, okay, steering input's coming in, or brake input's coming in, accelerator input's coming in. And it seemed to match up to what I was doing, so I was like, okay, I think I'm on the right track.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Have you considered the exact opposite approach, which is using an Xbox controller to drive a car?
Yeah.
I would.
In fact, go ahead.
I would think that would have been like one of the first things to occur to you when you were done.
Oh my gosh. In fact, I don't think I'm allowed to show this video. But when I used to work at the self-driving car company, so we used to build control systems for research companies to develop self-driving cars on. So our job was to take cars that you could buy on the market right now and reverse engineer them so that we put our own electronics into them and make them self-driving. So we used to have setups in all of our cars where we would have a steering wheel, like a video game steering wheel, and a throttle pedal and brake pedal in the passenger seat. And I got to drive that from the passenger seat while someone else was trying to make sure we didn't kill ourselves from the driver's seat.
That's nice. That's nice.
And one of the most eerie things in the world is seeing the actual steering wheel turn when you're turning the switch next to it.
That's great. That's fun.
Yeah.
So do you have any intention yourself of having an Xbox to car controller so you can sit in the back seat with a joypad and just move yourself around?
I could get away with that if I didn't have a manual transmission in my car, unless I built like some crazy apparatus to change gears for me too.
Sure.
But I'm telling myself that's really the next car that I get. I'll make sure it's automatic so I can change that electronically.
Well, let me put an idea in your head. Rental cars.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to mess up your own car.
Yeah, and you're just going to get that insurance waiver and you're good to go, right?
That's exactly right. Yep, and when you're using something as wonderful as Makina's M2, the plugs right into the OBD port. You remove the evidence. There's no problem.
Exactly.
So
I feel we might have a couple of phone calls after this from various government organizations.
Oh, we'll be put on a couple of watch lists, but
I'm already there, I guess.
I'm quite certain I was there. Yeah. I'm wondering if you've got any other kind of projects for cars that you have been considering.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the top things that comes to mind is, I mean, everyone loves lights, and I've already been working with lights for my actual product.
Yes.
One of the cool things about drifting is it's as much an art form as it is a very much a technical way of driving. Mm-hmm. So if you're not familiar with drifting, you're basically going around sideways everywhere on a racetrack as opposed to moving in a straight line. Mm-hmm. And I mean, people have cars that are decked out in all sorts of crazy fun paint and livery and even lights. But I think that a cool extension to that would be using the canvas data to have reactive lighting to the way you're drifting around, right? So you can incorporate not just the canvas data from here. I mean, you have motion sensors on the car, and you can also plug in your motion sensors into this device, and use that to, again, influence the way that lights come up and turn on and off. So if you're going to do a sweet late night or evening drift session at a racetrack, and you have, say, for example, the amount of steering input you put in and the amount of angle you have into the corner dictates certain lights reacting to the way on your car. I just think it's a more advanced version of the stuff you saw back in like Fast and Furious in the early 2000s.
That's a really interesting idea. I can just see I can just see a car going around a turn completely sideways with all of its lighting, a nice angry Darth Vader red as it's just burning up smoke.
Exactly. Yeah, and the cool thing is that it now diffuses through the smoke too, so it gets some really cool effects as well. So I think that'd be a lot of fun from just a nerdy perspective, and then also from a fun artsy perspective too.
Absolutely.
I think the one thing that I guess would be nice is if you have the option to have a full wire harness and electrical system set up that you can put on a bench.
Yeah.
That is ideal. Obviously, you can't really always do that. So you end up being like what I was doing, which is being hunched over your computer inside of your car when it's freezing outside, trying not to understand signals coming off of your car. And I feel like I've done that more times than I'd care to admit.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that's something that you guys at Makina have also experienced and endured yourself. Well, maybe not you in Nashville, but maybe the rest of the guys.
Yeah, the guys up there have definitely frozen their ass off in their car a few times, but that was also very much the point behind the Super B. We were right. We were sick of freezing our asses off and being in. I mean, if your car is sitting in the driveway, then why not just turn on the Wi-Fi and talk to your tablet or your laptop? Why be tethered by a micro USB cable, which is fine. We've got the micro USB, but yeah.
I wish I had the presence of mind to think that when I was doing the reverse engineering part in the testing. That would have been much smarter.
Yeah. And since you're familiar with the ESP32, don't forget that that's what the Super B is. So.
Yeah.
It could be an accessory processor even for someone like you. That was pretty much it for the interview, but Nishanth had some kind words for us.
Yep. I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this type of spotlight. I mean, obviously, I think it's a mutually beneficial thing, but then on top of that, for you guys just being super supportive of me building stuff, I really appreciate the support. It's been really awesome having the type of interaction I've had with both your engineering team and also with you as well. Having that back and forth makes me want to build stuff on your guys' platform even more.
Well, I appreciate it very much, and we certainly like to engender that kind of loyalty, but More fundamentally, we're hoping that our platform is open enough that anybody can embrace it and decide, hey, I like what that guy did with the Xbox controller. I'm going to do my own project, and
There you go.
there you go. Yeah.
Sounds good. Don, thank you so much. And it was super nice to meet you.
All right. Nice to meet you too. Talk
Cool.
to you later. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye.
If you'd like to get some of the same tools that Nishanth used to hack his car, then visit us at our website at machina.cc.